Welcome to the Legendary Leadership Summit 2019 with Cody, Dakota, Wooten.
And we are still here to have an amazing conversation with Angela Stillwell here. And Angela, she's a business advisor, she's a coach, she's a speaker, and she's the founder of Untapped Strengths. And basically, she's helping businesses and professionals create deeper connections with their audiences and build better relationships in all areas of life. She's gotten her MBA at Winthrop University, and she's been working with businesses in sales, marketing, business development, anywhere from your small startup all the way to large corporations. She's absolutely phenomenal. She's the creator of the Vulnerability Warrior. It's an online program for people going through major transitions, such as career changes, divorce, death of a loved one, empty nesters, and just doing phenomenal work living in Georgia, like you mentioned before we started recording everything. Yes. And you've got a Great Dane and a horse and a cat.
Yes. Yes, and my cat is also big.
That's great. My aunt used to have a cat, and it was an outdoors cat. No indoor cats were allowed. That cat was like the most ferocious thing. She lived for like 20 years. There were periods of time where she would disappear for months on end, and everyone's like, "Oh, she's probably dead." And she'd come back, she'd have scars and battle bruises from coyotes and whatever else is out there. But she kept coming back. Nothing was going to put her down.
Yeah, he's a barn cat, and it's amazing what barn cats can do. I mean, he's 18 pounds. That's a huge cat. That's a huge cat. And he's hilarious. He hangs out in the pasture with my horse. They're like pasture buddies.
That's awesome. So Angela, you're here for the Legendary Leadership Summit. I'm super excited to have you here. And your topic is elite leadership. What does it really take to be elite? So Angela, what does it take really to be elite?
I'm so glad you asked that, Cody. You know, the term elite gets thrown around, and usually we think of athletes, right? And an elite athlete is one who is so focused. There's actually a documentary, and oh gosh, the name of the documentary just went out of my head. But Wayne Gretzky and who else? Michael Jordan.
I know Wayne Gretzky. I know Michael Jordan. I know both of those. Wayne Gretzky was for the Avalanche, my hometown hockey team. Shout out.
Right. And football player. Everything's going out of my head right now.
That's okay.
But anyway, it's a phenomenal documentary about what it looks like to be this elite athlete, and what the focus is, and how much dedication it takes. And it's the same thing with an elite leader. Elite leadership isn't something that people are born with. It's something that one has to really desire and be willing to put in the 10,000, the 100,000 hours to become this person. Just because you are a leader does not mean that you are an elite leader. They are miles apart.
Absolutely. I'm 100% on board with you for that, because and on top of that, I would also say that there are a lot of people in leadership positions who are not even leaders. So not only do you have that, right? Not only do you have people who are leaders who aren't elite leaders, but you also have people in leadership positions who aren't leaders.
Yeah, in fact, I would say the great majority of people in quote unquote leadership roles are really just managers. And there's, people love to say that, they're shooting for that title, and a true elite leader isn't looking for a title. If people are looking for a title, odds are really good they're a manager. That's putting it bluntly, but if you're looking for a title, then you're probably a manager. And the difference between those two is macro and micro. A manager is looking at things from a micro level. What are my people doing? How can they meet my deadline? And it's all about me versus, someone who is a true leader is stepping in and looking at things from the macro standpoint. And how can I reach back and pull a person up and help them become a leader? It's more about outward facing rather than inward facing.
Absolutely.
When you look at the difference between leadership and management.
Yeah, I love that distinction there, because there are a lot of people who think managers are leaders, but managers are managers. And there's
Yes.
a different skill set required for management and for leadership. Now, I'm not going to say that managers are all terrible people and they're all like, you need to do this. And there's a skill set behind management, which is really important. I'm not taking anything away from management, because it is really important, but it's not the same thing as leadership. It's a completely different skill set for leadership.
Absolutely. It is, they're two totally different worlds. I mean, we need managers in organizations. They're the ones who get projects done. They're the ones who make sure that the steps are all, taken, and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and, that forward progress is made in a managed environment. I mean, there is a role for managers, and they are needed. So it's not to ding the management role by any means. It's just that there are some managers who are also leaders.
Definitely.
So it can go both ways, but management does not equate to leadership.
Exactly. And I would also throw in there are some people who are leaders who need some management skills.
Oh, good Lord, yes. Those are the leaders who are very self-aware, and they know what their strengths are, right? And they are constantly finding the people who can fill the gaps of where their strengths are versus where their weaknesses are. And they pull in the people or gain the additional knowledge. Most of the true leaders are going to pull in someone to do the roles that they are not good at doing. So, they'll look for someone on their team to help them with that.
Absolutely. So how did you get started working with and training elite leaders and those that want to become elite leaders? How did you get started on this path?
Yeah, it started many, many moons ago. As a kid, you and I talked briefly before we were going live that, I had an incredibly dysfunctional childhood. And growing up in an environment where I had a dad that, was a con artist, and, we were moving in the middle of the night. I changed schools 13 different times between kindergarten and my senior year of high school. And we moved over 60 times. So, when you're in that environment, you're either going to fail miserably, or you're going to put your blinders on and you're going to do what you need to do. And I was one of those who, at the age of 5, I overheard my mom having a conversation with my dad. And I thought, I don't ever want to put myself in that position. I don't ever want to put myself in that position. And so I, regardless of the school that I was in, I was a straight A student. And, as often as I could, I was involved in extracurricular activities. And, I was like, I'm going to finish high school. I'm going to then go to college. I don't care how, what it takes to do it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to get myself out of the situation that I am growing up in. So I did that, but in going through that whole process, I've labeled it becoming a master wall builder. I put up, those blinders we talked about. I put up the walls around me that would insulate me from what was going on so that I could focus on what were my goals, what was my vision, what was the next thing that I needed to be doing. And so in putting up those walls, you keep people out. You don't make those deeper connections that are really needed once you get beyond all of that, right?
Yeah.
And, excuse me. So once I got out of undergrad school and, started my career, still didn't realize that I had those walls up. Ended up getting married in my mid-20s. We were married for a couple of decades. And one day I came home and I was like, something's not working here, because we were like train tracks. In the distance, it looks like they're coming together, but they never do, right? They're still the same distance apart. And that was our relationship. We had a great relationship. We were both successful, and we were supportive of each other's success, but we didn't have a relationship between the two of us. And so trying to work on that, and obviously it ended up not working because I ended up divorced, and that, we're good friends now. But what I learned after going through the divorce and doing the introspective work on myself was, what were the things that I did right and what were the things that I did wrong? I can't control what he did or didn't do, but I could work on me. And one of the biggest things for me was tearing down those walls and actually letting people into my realm and starting to share my stories. And once I did that, it was amazing how the relationships in my life with my family members and friends and business and that sort of thing deepened so much. And I thought, okay, so how can I take this and pull it into what I'm doing? Because at the time I had sold my financial planning practice that I owned when I was trying to help get my marriage back in line. And so then I started doing freelance, and I was doing consulting and doing some copywriting and doing some coaching here and there and that sort of thing, because I'd kind of always been doing those things. And so I started pulling in some of the things that I had learned about being more vulnerable and being more open and building those connections and, really looking at your life from a holistic standpoint. Not that there's true balance in anyone's life, because anytime you have anything going on, there's always going to be something out of balance. But having an awareness of that imbalance and then starting to train my clients on that, whether it was organizations or individuals, and doing workshops and that sort of thing, and eventually developed Vulnerability Warrior to help people lean into, the transitions that they had gone through, and learning to use those as stepping stones and the foundation to build their strength and their story to make deeper connections with people. And so just over time, it evolved into the focus of, high performance and elite leadership.
That's absolutely phenomenal. And it's really interesting how so often we can go through life and not talk about the challenges we've been through, not talk about the problems we're working on overcoming or have overcome, and how as soon as we start doing that, what we're able to accomplish dramatically increases. It's out of this world how much it increases.
Absolutely. It's amazing. Brene Brown has done such a great job of bringing the word vulnerability to, everyone's vocabulary and changing the definition of it. But, before Brene, Sigmund Freud, actually, there's a quote from Sigmund Freud that says, out of our vulnerabilities comes our strength. And so there were people who were talking about it before Brene, but she's obviously, made it much more in the common vernacular for everyone, or not necessarily for everyone, but a good majority of people who are interested in elite leadership know about Brené's work. And now she even has the special on Netflix, so people who may not be readers now have access to her documentary. But it's amazing how that vulnerability and authenticity is something that is part of our DNA, because that's where the storytelling comes in, and it's through storytelling that the deepest connections are made. But we, over the last several decades, had moved away from that. And if you go back in time, since the beginning of time, it is that sitting around the fire and sharing stories where people connected generation after generation after generation. And it's still in tribal communities. And when I say tribal communities, that there's actually a book called, oh goodness gracious. I can't remember the name of that book either. It's a great book, but it talks about democratic societies versus tribal societies. And tribal societies are the societies who still operate in the format that humans have operated since the beginning of time. And it's also the format that we all go back to whenever we get backed into a corner, or when there is some type of conflict going on. We all move back into that tribal arena. And it is through storytelling that in that environment that people really build those relationships. There have been Lawrence of Arabia. Most of us today think of that as, the book and the movie and that sort of thing. Lawrence of Arabia was a real guy. And it was through storytelling that he made these huge strides during the war and building relationships with entire tribes to help support the war effort to shut down, the dark side of the war. And it's amazing that it was through storytelling. That's what he did. He moved in and really built those relationships through storytelling.
Absolutely. And storytelling, I think, is becoming a lost art, at least in our society. And it's not that we can't tell stories that exist. It's that we have a challenge telling our own story in a way that portrays something of meaning and a direction where people can go towards.
Yeah, people are so, in the world of social media, we have our phones and everything, our selfies and everything else have to look absolutely perfect. There's all these filters and everything else, all of the writing, everything has to be absolutely perfect in today's realm. And that's, I call it the highlight reel versus the real life reel. And it's, look, I'll be 53 in a little over a month, and I've got wrinkles. I'm proud of my wrinkles. I've smiled a lot. I've laughed a lot, and that's just real life. But so many people will erase those wrinkles and those parts of their life because they don't want anyone to see any of that. And I was guilty of it for a long time myself, because how do you tell people that you grew up the way that you did? And, that you had, in addition to the father that I had, I also had an abusive stepfather. And, and my mom was murdered. And, how do you share those stories in a way that is acceptable?
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to do it by taking some of the emotion out and making the audience feel safe, whoever that audience is, whether it is a one person or a whole auditorium full of people. It's your job as the presenter to make them feel safe. And by the way, that's a huge thing with elite leadership, is making your team, making, all of the people around you feel safe to speak their truth, to come to you with any issues that are going on, to feel safe in the middle of conflict, to feel safe in the middle of, crazy opportunity, to take risks. With that elite leadership position and that authenticity and that vulnerability, you put this whole covering of safety around the people that are in your realm. And once you do that, those people become even better performers, and they open up, and you just build this whole culture around you that is so phenomenal.
Absolutely. So leading into that, how does an elite leader or someone wanting to be an elite leader create that safety around them so that people can open up and be human within that relationship?
Yeah, it's by sharing, your own stories. And I've had clients who've said, well, I didn't really go through a whole lot. Okay, but people connect with you as a person. They don't connect with you as a leader or as a manager or as a CEO or as a whatever your position is. They connect with who you are, who you be. It's about the being. It's not about the doing. And when you can really show who you are, then that provides that safety. And I mean, maybe you've had nothing tragic happen in your life, and God bless you if you haven't. And you've probably had a situation where maybe you've been in Starbucks and you've bought the coffee for the person behind you, or, you've helped a little old lady cross the street, or, you're part of dog rescue, or there's a whole bunch of things that if you are an elite leader that you are doing, and there are stories every single day. You just have to open up your eyes and see the stories that are going on. And it doesn't have to just be stories in your life. It can be stories that are going on around you, but start sharing via story, because when you do that, you're showing that you are leading from, everybody, so many people today use the word heart-centered. And while that's great, it sounds kind of woo-woo, and elite leadership isn't necessarily about woo-woo, but leading from that heart-centered place, that's where you provide that safety, because people know that they can come to you, and you also set up boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And boundaries make people feel safe too. People think they don't want boundaries. People think they don't want discipline. People think that they don't want those types of things. But when they don't have them, they don't really know where they can go and where they can't go with themselves, with you, with business, whatever. So, I actually posted on my Facebook page earlier today. I use Michael Hyatt's Full Focus Planner. And one of the things that I mentioned in it was, discipline equals freedom. And those boundaries also equal freedom.
Absolutely.
It's pretty, it's a little counterintuitive to think that, but that's where freedom comes in, and that's where safety comes in, and that's where comfort comes in.
Definitely. I think of, like, if you had a highway and you had a bunch of people get on it, but there's no lines anywhere on the highway, how do you know it? How do you know if you're in the right lane? How do you even know if you're going in the right direction, right? How do you know when it's okay to lane shift and when it's not okay to lane shift? And how do you know what speed you should be going, right?
Right. Right.
You don't.
Have you ever traveled in Asia?
I have not had that opportunity as of yet. It's definitely on my list of things to do. Lots of—
You'll experience exactly what you're talking about when you travel over there. they're just like cars are just packed side by side and they're moving around all over the place. And it's like, whoa, I'm glad somebody else is driving.
Yeah, it creates chaos. Now I've been in Italy. I haven't driven in Asia, but I've been in I've been in Italy traffic, and sometimes it gets crazy like that. They do have some rules, but like I remember being on a bus, and the bus is literally driving like not even a foot away from the car in front of them, and we're talking like high speeds, and it's a little tiny car in front of you, and the entire time I'm thinking like, if they tap on their brakes, we're going to run them over. Like, and it's all over for that person, and that's their norm, and I'm like, that's not okay. Like, and another thing, because I did a whole semester abroad while I was there were a lot of accidents that happened. A ton of accidents. It was every day near us I would see accidents, and multiple accidents. It's not just like one accident. It was multiple accidents per day, because people are basically living there not following the rules that are there, or the rules that are in place are not very well defined. And that's what happens when you don't have those boundaries, right? People get in accidents.
Yep. They step in potholes and sinkholes and all sorts of things.
Absolutely. So and with all of this, one other thing that I really appreciate that you said is that when it comes to stories, you don't have to necessarily tell your story for it to be effective as a leader, because so many leaders, especially in what we're experiencing today, you see this in the business world a lot, where people feel like they have to tell their story, and they start running out of stories, and then it's hard for them to come up with something that continues the conversation, and they'll get either repetitive, so you hear the same thing every single time, or they'll start getting like too nitty gritty to the point where you're like, you're talking about a problem that no one cares about. Right? And by being able to talk about other stories, not necessarily just your story, because your story is still important, especially if you want to be seen as the leader, but you can utilize other people's stories as a tool to increase your leadership. I think that's really important that people miss.
Yeah. There are so many incredible stories in the world. And, another thing that elite leaders do is spend a lot of time reading and being aware of what phenomenal people around the world are doing. And not just today, but, reading biographies of people who have come before us. And, when you spend a lot of time doing that kind of research and digging into, who were the people who got us to where we are, there's a lot of phenomenal stories of people who got us to where we are over, the centuries, and sharing those stories and the things that those people went through to get to here need to be told over and over and over again. And I don't mean you as an individual repeating the same story over and over and over. I mean the stories of our history, not just the US's history, but I'm talking people in general. So many phenomenal stories of just amazing feats that have been accomplished, and heroic acts, and even simple stories, that it's the simple story that people really connect to. It's that story of, standing in line in the grocery, and the woman in front of you has a toddler on one hip and, a 3 or 4-year-old in the grocery cart, and she, they're unloading the groceries, and she, the woman's ringing it up, or the man or whomever, the cashier, is ringing it up, and the woman is short $10 or $20, and she's all embarrassed, and you go, I got this. Or the person in front of you says to the person, I got this, I'll put that additional money on my tab. You go on. I mean, those are just day-to-day heartfelt stories of people making a difference in someone else's life.
Absolutely. And that's the call of a leader, is to make a difference in someone else's life. And so often we think that, the leader, even especially when you think of legendary leaders, you think that legendary means world changing, but that's not necessarily what a legendary leader has to do. They have to make the small impacts. And some of the most legendary leaders, you don't actually know their names. They're somewhere in the background, and they've supported other legendary leaders. One great example of this, a lot of people look to Martin Luther King Jr. as a legendary leader, and he was. He was absolutely a legendary leader, accomplished amazing things, changed the world, no doubts. However, he was not the only person that allowed the world to be changed. There were a ton of other people working in the background whose names we don't know at all, who allowed him to have the platform to be able to say that. And those individuals are just as legendary as Martin Luther King Jr. And the people who were in the ground doing things, who were standing in the crowds during those times, they are just as legendary, and we'll never know their names. However, if it wasn't for that small act that they did, the world would not have changed.
Right. Exactly. And recently, what was the movie that recently came out about the women who were working at NASA during the moon landing, and no one knew their names until the movie came out, right? Yeah. No one knew anything about them. And they were during the time when Martin Luther King was doing his thing. And they had, they became engineers, and they were doing this phenomenal behind the scenes work. And that's so typical of an elite leader, because they lead from a servant leadership standpoint. They put others first. There's a book called Always Eat Last.
Yeah. It's Simon Sinek, I believe.
I can't remember.
Leaders Eat Last?
Doesn't matter. Leaders Eat Last. But it's also something that is in the military, and it's about that whole servant leadership thing. You make sure that everyone around you is taken care of, and that the goal and the vision of whatever it is that you're working on is promoted, and you make sure that the people around you are empowered to do the things that they need to do in order to attain the goal and to live into that vision. It's not about you being out front as an elite leader. It's about making sure that you empower the people who are part of your team, part of your world, to do the work that they need to be doing.
Absolutely, because it's not just a one-man show.
No.
You do have your place within the show, and your place may be out front, but there are other people who are a part of the show. And if their parts aren't going correctly, the show doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah, it's like the conductor in front of a symphony. He has his back to the audience, or she has her back to the audience. No one really sees their face until after it's all over with and they turn around and take their bow. But they are watching all of the musicians perform beautifully, who are being directed by the conductor.
Absolutely. So going off of all of this, what would you say are some of the habits of elite leaders?
Yeah, the habits of leaders, they have a routine going back to that, discipline equals freedom, right? They are very good about setting boundaries. They are very good at listening, active listening. It's not just listening, active listening, really being aware of what's being said and also being aware of what is not being said. That can be just as important, if not more important, to know what's not being said. So building the habit of active listening, self-awareness, and self-care. A true elite leader knows that the best way to lead is by taking care of themselves, making sure that they have their health in order, that they have their workout routines in order, that they are doing the things that they need to do to take care of themselves so that they can then take care of everyone else. One of the things that I love to share with people, particularly women. Women are so great at putting everyone else first and taking care of themselves last. And you hear the phrase of fill your cup, keep your cup full. No. It's not about keeping your cup full or refilling your cup. It's about having your cup overflowing and serving from your saucer.
I like
because
that.
Every time you let that cup get just a little bit more empty, you have less to give. You have to be taking care of yourself and keeping your cup so full that it is overflowing into the saucer, and there is plenty to give away at that point.
I love that. So within that, I want to stick on this topic. How do you keep your cup so full that it continues to overflow? Because there are so many people, like you're saying, that aren't doing that, and we can see it in the world today.
Yeah. And it's going to be different for every person, but it's a holistic view. You have to be aware of, most people who have done personal development have heard of the wheel of life, and the wheel of life can have, it has different wedges in it, and each wedge, accounts for a different piece of your life, whether that is your intimate relationships, your family relationships, your fun relationships, with friends and that sort of thing, business, your finances, your health, all of you can have a wheel of life that has 5 wedges to it, and there are wheels of life that have 15 wedges in them, whatever those wedges look like and whoever's looking at them, making sure that you are ultra aware of all of the wedges and how you score yourself in all of the wedges. Now, the score is usually on a 1 to 10, and everybody goes, oh, I want to be at a 10. Well, it's not really possible to have everything at a 10 at all times. That's just not possible. The closer that you can get it to where everything is about the same, then that wheel can roll more smoothly, right? But when you have an area that is completely out of whack, your home life isn't the way that you want it, for instance, that impacts everything else in your life. If you have your health out of alignment, it impacts everything else in your life. Despite the fact that you are a master compartmentalizer, it's still going to bleed into everything else. So it's really managing all of those, and that looks different for every person, right? It's for some people, it's if you're in a relationship with a significant other, it's making sure that you're doing the things to maintain that relationship, and not just maintain it, but to continually improve it. What are your continual improvement processes in each area of your life? Are you doing date night on the regular? Do you understand the 5 love languages, your own 5 love languages, and the love languages of your significant other? And by the way, 5 love languages, while that book was written from an intimate relationship standpoint, yeah, it's a phenomenal
I've got it right
book.
here. Yeah. It's a fantastic book.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that you can use in your life all day long with every relationship. If in your day-to-day interactions with people, you are speaking in all 5 love languages, you're going to hit on the person's love language. You know, but yet we all want to speak in only our love language. But if you can train yourself to speak in all 5 of them. And the other thing is understanding, you know, what are the 6 human needs? I'm not talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm talking about the 6 human needs: love and connection, and certainty and uncertainty, and significance and growth and contribution. When you understand those, and different people are led by a different human need. Some people are led more with the love and connection aspect. Other people want significance. Other people want certainty. Other people are driven by uncertainty. And all of us have a little bit of all of them in us. But if you're touching on each of those, and you're touching on the 5 love languages, then you are building phenomenal relationships in all areas of your life. And, you know, so really doing that self-care is also making sure that you are further developing your whole personal aspect, and really integrating that into all parts of your life.
Absolutely.
And if you're doing that, then, you know, yeah, you're doing a great job.
Definitely. And I loved with your example of the wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Within the wheel, when you get everything balanced, even if it's balanced at a smaller scale, it's easy to roll a wheel that's round, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so often people don't do that. They allow one thing to get completely out of whack in either direction. It doesn't matter. It could be one thing is perfect and everything else sucks, or it could be
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, there's a couple gaps, and every single time there's a gap somewhere, you got to figure out, how do I roll the wheel around that gap? And it's so difficult the more gaps you have, or the more separate different pieces are, because it gets caught. So even if you do have one perfect 10 and everything else is a 3, how do you get past the one? It actually ends up becoming a problem because it's so much out of whack compared to the others. Yeah,
that becomes a kickstand. Remember bikes that have kickstands?
Yeah, definitely.
You can't ride with your kickstand down.
Exactly. It drags on the ground, and you're trying to balance, but you can't balance in half of the direction that you need to balance. So you end up overcompensating, and you fall flat on your face, and you're left with scars. I've got scars from bike accidents, not because of the kickstand, but they can suck.
Yep. Maybe it was because your wheels were out of balance.
It's because I wasn't paying attention to where I was going on the road. I was in a rush, and I was all like, I need to get back. And then I hit the sidewalk, but it wasn't an edge sidewalk. It was a flat sidewalk. So I hit it, connected, and just flew me off the bike. Lots of fun with that. Yeah. And
that's a good story to tell.
Yeah. And that happens to a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Their mind is not where they are right now. And they're on the bike or whatever vehicle they're on, and their mind is not focused on where they're going. And out of the blue, they hit something that they weren't paying attention to. And boom, they go flying in every which direction except the one they want to be going. Right.
We see it all the time with, businesses where, they're headed down one particular path, and they're not paying attention to regulations, or they're not paying attention to, supplies, or they're not paying attention to their culture, or they're not paying attention to, there's all sorts of things. I mean, Amazon is still doing well, but you look at how everything was in a state of flux when Jeff Bezos' marriage fell apart. Nobody was focused on what was going on with Amazon. You look at what's going on with Tesla, and Elon Musk is focusing out here, in space and all of that, and meanwhile Tesla is having issues, and so we all play this balancing act, and it's never, people go, I want my life to be in balance. Okay, first of all, let's understand, life is never, ever, ever, ever 100% in balance. And here's why. Every time you say yes to one thing, you are inherently saying no to something else.
Yeah.
You can't be doing more than one thing at a time. It's just impossible. Even if you're switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, you're only on the one thing at a time. You're not really doing two things at the same time. There is a time where there is a change between the two.
And there's actually some really interesting science behind that too, because a lot of people will say, like, I'm great at multitasking. However, what they've found is the people who believe they're the best at multitasking are actually worse at multitasking than people who don't believe they're good at multitasking. And because what happens is they begin to focus, and then there's a shift that happens, which is a gap where nothing is happening except a transition. And then when they get to the other side of that transition, they have to usually pick up whatever that thing is from a further back starting point than if they had just stuck with it. And every time they switch back, they have to restart that process of figuring out, okay, how do I get here? It's kind of like when you're reading a book and you get halfway through a page and you look up really quick and start to have a conversation, and you look back at the page, you're like, oh crap, where was I? And you have to start the whole paragraph over in order to get back to the point. And the more you stop and the more you switch your task, the more that happens, until you're just on the same page for months and nothing's happened.
Yeah, most definitely. And there are times when I'm reading a page, but something else is playing in the back of my mind. I'm not really focused on that page.
Yeah.
And I have to reread the page like 10 times because whatever it is that's going on is distracting me, whether it's in my own head or something going on around me. It's you're starting over and over and over. It's like Groundhog Day.
Exactly. Or one that I encounter a lot is I didn't sleep well the night before, or I was up really late the night before. So I tried to read, and my mind, like, my eyes start to go hazy, and then I'm like, hold on, wait, where's the page? Like, I know it's here, but I'm not seeing a page because my eyes went hazy. And then I wake myself up and I'm like, oh crap, hold on, wait, I don't remember what the last couple of words were, and it just keeps going back and forth again like that.
Yeah. And, mentioning the sleep and not sleeping well, that is a huge habit that elite leaders get into, is protecting their sleep. And, it comes more naturally for some people than others. I'm not a great sleeper. I'm a very light sleeper, and it's hard for me to go to sleep. And I work really hard at making sure that if I've had a night where I haven't slept well, that day I will try to take a nap. Can it always happen? No, it doesn't always happen. But I'm really protective of that space. And here's why. Studies have shown that sleep is when your brain cleanses itself. It's not just about replenishing your body, but it's about a whole chemical cleansing and washing of the trash out of your system and out of your brain. And if you're not doing that, then you get that buildup. It's a bad chemical buildup within your brain.
And
so
not
that's
just your brain, but it's your entire body, right?
Absolutely. It's where your body replenishes itself. It's if you're working out, that's when your body is healing. If you're sick, sleep is when your body is healing. it is a healing process for your psyche, for your physical brain, for your mental brain, for your whole entire physical being. That's when your cells replenish. That's when you rejuvenate. Everything about you rejuvenates in your sleep.
Absolutely. And it's becoming very prevalent in our society today, where people are not guarding their sleep. And it's impacting us a ton. People are tired all the time. They try to rely on something outside of their power, like caffeine, to always keep them awake and keep them focused. And caffeine can only do so much. I know, because I've tried it myself, and caffeine will only get me so far.
Right. And then you start having all sorts of side effects.
Oh my gosh. Like the other night, I was up till like 5 a.m. and it's because I was very focused on working on something specific with a deadline. And so the next day I was all like, I need caffeine. I went to Starbucks that day, and I got like a triple shot cappuccino. And like right after that, my body started twitching, my eyes started twitching, and I'm like, this is not okay to be happening. And the thing that you were talking about with elite leaders is, even though I couldn't take a nap during that day, I was sure the next night I would get plenty of rest.
Yeah. And you have to. And when you have a week where it's like that, then please make sure that you are protecting your downtime over the weekend. Don't plan a lot of projects around your house or whatever to get done when you've had a week where you haven't had any sleep. I mean, we all have times where we get little sleep. When I'm on the road and I have 2 days in a row or 3 days in a row where I'm doing big workshops and I have to be up at, 4:00 in the morning because I have travel time before I get there or whatever, you don't get a lot of sleep, or I don't get a lot of sleep, because I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to be up at 4:00 in the morning. If I go to bed right now, I know I can get 6 hours of sleep. And then, another hour goes by. If I go to bed right now, I know I can get 5 hours of sleep. So when I do have weeks like that, then I make sure that once that time is over, I have nothing scheduled, except maybe massage, foot massage, nap time, walking in nature. I don't even really watch TV. I make sure that my food is super healthy. I drink lots of water. And if I'm going to have caffeine, it's going to be something like matcha tea or green tea. I'm not going to do coffee. I'm not going to do that. I try to make sure that I'm doing the things to heal my body. And yes, coffee has a lot of great benefits to it. It also has a lot of others. And most people who are drinking coffee aren't drinking just coffee. They're drinking, with all sorts of other things in it. The syrups and the sugars and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you're drinking a matcha tea or a green tea, you can usually get away without adding anything to it.
Absolutely. And that makes me think of another thing, because part of rest is sleep, but part of rest is also not doing anything. And I think that is something that we lose a lot in today's world. We're so focused on doing something all the time, busy, doing something else, right? Whether it's work or just being on the phone, right? I have to do something, so I'm going to put Facebook in front of my face, right? And just always actively doing something, and we get worn out. We get torn down. And I think that there needs to be a period where you're not actively doing anything. You're being very passive in what you're doing.
Yes. In fact, Keith Cunningham, are you familiar with him?
I've heard of Keith Cunningham, yeah.
He's from Texas. The rich dad, poor dad. He was the rich dad, is my understanding, or something about that. But anyway, he's phenomenal real estate investor. He also invests in all kinds of businesses and speaks all over the place. And he has a quote unquote MBA program, a business MBA program. It's not really obviously an MBA program, but you learn more than you probably do. And I have an MBA, and I can say that I have learned a ton from listening to Keith speak. And I've met him at Tony Robbins' Business Mastery event a couple of times. And one of the things that Keith does, and he learned this from one of his mentors, is to schedule thinking time.
Yeah.
And that goes to what you're saying, not doing anything else, just having time where you're doing nothing. And he actually, the way that Keith does it, he has a chair and he has a particular corner in his office, and he sits in that chair for his hour or 2 hours or whatever his thinking time is. And he doesn't even really journal or anything during that time. He may have a little notepad off to the side if something comes to his mind, so he can just like jot down an idea, but to schedule that thinking time. And I do that a lot with my walks. I use my walking time. A lot of times I'll listen to podcasts or, books on Audible or something like that. But I also walk in nature with nothing, no music, no nothing, and just let my brain do what it needs to do. Because like you said, it's so rarely do we do that anymore. We feel like we always have to have something going, a podcast, music, a book, TV, social media, interviews, whatever it is. And I mean, good Lord, if you look at my Audible, I have a bajillion books on there, and my bookshelves, I have a bajillion books, and, podcasts I'm subscribed to. And, it's like, and I listen to most of them at 1.5 to 2 times speed. So, it's like the whole time. But that complete downtime, that complete mental downtime, and that's what's so important. It's making sure that it's that mental downtime. And, some people, like if people own a home or something, they really enjoy doing things like just cutting the grass or, doing things that don't require the brain work, because it allows the brain to open up and have that open space and have more creativity as a result of that. Yeah.
Do you know any of Stephen Kotler's work?
Yeah. Stealing Fire, he and Jamie Wheel. Yeah.
And Rise of Superman.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So one of the things they talk about a lot, both of them, personally, I like Stephen Kotler better. That's a personal preference. Everyone's allowed to have a preference. Stephen Kotler really speaks to me, though. And one of the things that they talk about a lot is when you're always in the thinking part of the brain, it's like working on a sticky pad, right? You can only write what's able to be on the sticky pad. However, if you allow the subconscious mind and things to go into the subconscious mind, and you allow the conscious mind to shut down, the subconscious mind's like a NASA supercomputer in comparison to the sticky note. And so if you want that high ability thinking and you want ideas to connect that you can't normally see, you have to give the brain the opportunity to let the information go into the subconscious. And we're so focused on being in the conscious that we don't ever let anything go to the subconscious. And it's like trying to scribble everything down on a sticky note, right? Like, could you imagine, like, I'm going to write a biography on a sticky note, one sticky note, let's go, right? Like, you can't do it, right? Like,
Right.
Could you imagine Abraham Lincoln's biography written on a sticky note? Like, it's not going to happen.
He did say, don't believe everything you see on the internet.
That's a whole other problem, though. I don't think we have enough time to work into that one. That one, oh boy, that's misinformation, and that's a whole rabbit hole that I think we're gonna leave for a conversation for another day. But
Exactly.
like if you want to be elite, you have to access that supercomputer. If you don't access that supercomputer, you can't be elite.
Yeah, there's the whole realm of neuroscience and neuroplasticity and understanding neural pathways and how you have developed those neural pathways and what the things that you have to do to rewrite neural pathways. And it's about allowing the subconscious to come to the forefront so that you have an awareness of what's going on in your because your subconscious is ruling everything. Whether you believe it or not, it's ruling everything. So if you're not giving yourself the opportunity to go there and pull from your subconscious and feed into your subconscious, then you have all sorts of beliefs and stories and things that are running on these neural pathways that you aren't even aware of. But you are making decisions based on these things that you are not even aware of. And it's not until you start pulling those layers back and really getting into all of that you can even do anything with any of that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you brought up the wheel of life earlier. I did this exercise a while back with the wheel of life, and the particular one I did added a section that I don't normally see in wheel of life, and it was contribution, and it asked me to like rate my contribution. And I rated myself very low because in my mind, like a high level of contribution is like Bill Gates. Like that guy is high levels of contribution, able to not only take care of his family, but able to take care of countries basically with his, and like that's where I want to get to one day in my ability to contribute. And I'm not there, obviously. I'm just not. One day, yes. Today, not so much. And so I rated myself very low. And the story I was telling myself, and I discovered it in doing this and giving myself just time, right? Not like going and doing it. It was that reflection time. The story I was telling myself was that I wasn't making enough money to contribute at the level I was doing. And what I realized is that story was feeding itself into this really bad cycle where I wasn't making enough money to contribute at the level I want. And when I wasn't contributing at the level I wanted, it demotivated me from making the money I needed to make. And so I started to tell myself a new story. It wasn't about the money I made that would allow me to contribute. It's that I could contribute in ways that didn't require money. And that completely changed my dynamic and allowed me to make more money.
Yeah, absolutely. Because contribution is it's not just about what you're giving monetarily. And just because we'll just use $100 as an example. Your income is $100 versus $100,000. Yeah. 10% of 100,000 is a lot more dollar wise. 10% of $100 is still 10% of what you have. There's all sorts of parables and biblical stories about, what people did with their gifts and what they had. And when you give more of yourself, whatever it is that you have, that's better than someone who has a bajillion dollars giving, that same percentage, because it's actually more of what makes up you, and it's not just money. It's, what are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your people? What are you, are you holding the door open for people? Are you sharing content online? Are you really using the gifts that you have, the inherent gifts that you've been given in life? Are you using those to serve others. And if you are, then you are contributing. You absolutely are contributing. It's not
Absolutely.
about the dollar amount.
Exactly. And that was one of the stories I had to overcome and one of the lessons I had to learn in order to make it further into life. And like the crazy thing is, it doesn't take a lot to change people's lives. This is
No.
something I love to talk about. There are so many people that are so lost in life, so downtrodden in life, that they're
Mhm.
looking for any grasp of anything to be there.
Yes.
And there are stories where someone literally all they did was smile and notice
Yes.
somebody. And that alone allowed that person not to commit suicide that day.
Yes.
It's powerful.
100% of the world's population is walking around wanting to be acknowledged. 100% of the world's population wants to be acknowledged. And it's such a small percentage of the world's population that is acknowledged on a daily basis. How many times do we walk past people and never even realize that we have walked past them? And I'm talking about everywhere in the world this happens. This isn't, people like to say, oh, where we live is blah, blah, blah. No, I'm talking about everywhere in the world it happens. And when we can, and yes, different cultures, you don't make eye contact and you don't smile and you don't do certain things based on the culture. So there are different things that you have to do in different cultures to acknowledge someone. However, in whatever it is in your culture that you do to acknowledge someone, take the time to acknowledge that there is another human being in your presence. Put your phone down, turn your phone off, turn it face down, whatever that looks like. When you're out with friends, when you walk up and someone is right behind you, hold that door open for them to come through. Acknowledge that there is a human being right behind you. Or you see someone coming out and you're coming in, grab the door for them. See someone in the parking lot and they have, a shopping cart and, they got a baby on the hip. Offer to take that shopping cart for them. There are so many small little things that we can all do day to day to make people feel acknowledged. It doesn't have to be any grandiose thing. It could be sending a text to someone that you haven't sent a text to in a long time that just says, hey, you know what? I was thinking about you today and just wanted to say hi and hope things are going well for you. That's an easy thing to do. How many contacts do we have in our phone that, we haven't had any kind of a conversation with in years? What would it take to send a text to some of those people? And you never know. You never know what that person is needing.
Absolutely.
Or, contributing at your church or, contributing to, there's so many things that we can do to acknowledge that there are other human beings around us.
Absolutely. And I would even venture to say that doing that one little thing will impact the other person's life, period.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They may not even realize what's going on in their life right now. And you just suddenly bringing up something can be impactful. Maybe it's not some great, terrible tragedy going on, but maybe that day they just were really stressed at work. And you just sent a text and it said, hey, and all of a sudden they're flooded with all the great memories that you had in the past. Mm-hmm. You've just changed their life. Simple. Yeah.
And there's a butterfly effect associated with that, right? There's a ripple effect. So they get this text from you and it puts a smile on their face. You hope. And the odds are really good that because of that chemical cascade, those good hormones that you get flowing in their body as a result of that smile you put on their face, because you put a smile on their face, that means their oxytocin goes up. Guess what happens when you get more oxytocin going in your body?
What happens?
You are more inclined to do something for someone else. So you start this whole ripple effect. just by doing something, a little bitty something kind for someone else. You start this whole ripple effect of kindness.
Absolutely. And on top of that, what a lot of the science and research is starting to show is that actually whenever you contribute to someone else in whatever way, you actually get more benefits than they do, which is crazy, right? So it's like it's extra incentive to be generous in whatever way you're able to be generous.
Yeah, generosity is huge. It is so huge. Jerry Rice, that was who I was trying to think of in the documentary, Jerry
Boom,
Rice,
there
the
you
football
go.
player. One of my former coaches and mentors, he was also an NFL football player, and he would use Jerry Rice as the definition of generosity, because every time Jerry Rice went out on the field, whether it was for practice or in a game, he was always going to give everything he had toward whatever it was that he was doing. And in that documentary, he even talks about that in his personal life, he does that. He's one of these people who's all in. And Wayne Gretzky, same thing, all in on whatever it is that he's doing in the moment. And every athlete that they interviewed in that documentary, and gosh, I wish I could remember the name of that documentary. But every single one of them, they were so generous with their talent, with their time, with their effort, and with their communities. Generosity is not just about a dollar amount or anything. It's a way of being.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely a way of being.
Definitely. Yeah. And it so often we forget how simple it really can be and how much of an impact it can have. And when you think about it, everybody is looking for connection. Your team, in your business, in your family, they're all looking for it already.
Yeah.
You just have to make a small step to give it. And when you do give it and you give people what they've been looking for and they're not finding it anywhere else, it's like giving person water when they've been traveling in the desert. They don't want to stop drinking, right? And if you continue to give them water, they will stay with you through whatever hell comes forward.
Absolutely. And that, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because when we were talking about the human needs, the 6 human needs, the certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection are 1, contribution and growth. The thing with human needs, if something provides 3 or more of those needs, it very quickly and easily becomes an addiction. So in your relationships, think about this. If you are making people feel significant, if you are connecting with them, if you stand in integrity and there is a certainty about who you are, the things that you're going to do, there are 3 of them right there. If you also add in a little bit of fun and a little bit of uncertainty, there's 4. If you are sharing with them, you are contributing to their lives. That's 5. If you give them something that helps them grow as an individual, that's 6. Those people are going to be so addicted to you.
Yeah.
It's amazing how easy it is to really earn that know, like, and trust. And we have the opportunity to do it every single day. And elite leaders, that's what they're doing. They are operating in all 6 of those human needs all day, every day.
And
it's
they're
just inherent.
excited about it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And they're not doing it to manipulate.
Yeah. So that brings up an interesting point, And I'm just curious as to kind of where we can go with this.
Mhm.
When you have the ability to impact people in different ways, there's also a negative side that comes with things. So what are some
Mhm.
of the negative sides that you kind of see around this whole area?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was part of a mastermind years ago, and the focus was on being elite. And the parameters around it were absolutely the things that we're talking about. However, if you aren't careful, we all have a shadow side, right? And if you continually talk about your eliteness, what happens is you move from an elite leader into, or an elite performer into elitism,
Mm,
where you look down on people who aren't doing things the way that you do them. And it's such a small little shift. And if you're not aware, it's so easy to fall into that. It's
definitely.
so easy to fall into that.
And you see it a lot in the world of personal development,
Yeah.
because people are getting something that can give them an edge. When you're utilizing the principles of personal development, it does give you an edge. And there are a lot of people in the personal development world who look at other people who aren't in the personal development world, and they think, oh, I'm better than them. And
Right.
they're never going to be as great as me because they're not in the same world as me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you've really done the work, you learn to love people right where they are. It's not about, are they doing what you want them to do or what you think they should do? Everybody's on their own path. And a true elite leader is going to love the people. And when I say love, I don't mean, that whole, I love you kind of thing. They're going to meet people right where they are.
Yeah.
It's not about forcing someone into, forcing a square peg into a round hole, or that's the right way. A square peg into a round hole. It's about meeting people right where they are and empowering them to be all that they can be and that they are ready to be. Not everyone is ready to step into power.
Definitely.
Not everyone will ever step into power. I mean, there are some people who are followers. Nobody can be a leader if there isn't anybody behind you. you know so it's and the other thing is, if you're truly an elite leader, you're not looking to have people behind you. You're looking to have people beside you and in front of you that you have pushed ahead of you, because that's really what it's all about. It's about giving people what they need to become fully themselves. What do they need to remove their masks, to step into their authentic selves, to step into the power that they can handle, and to become, to be, what they desire to be, what they have been gifted to be.
Definitely. When you brought up the concept of love, a lot of people think of love like, oh, I love you. Ah.
Right.
One of
Right.
one of my favorite concepts of love actually comes from, I'm pretty sure it comes originally from The Art of War. I also know that it was in the book Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, the concept is that once you know your enemy so perfectly that you are able to defeat your enemy, in that moment, you've learned to love your enemy. because in order to beat them, you have to understand them. And it's in that
Yes.
understanding that you've come to love them. And
Mhm.
so that is I think a very pure form of love. It's not like this, like, oh, everything is great and lovey-dovey and rainbows and butterflies and all that jazz, right? Like, it's not that, right?
Right, right.
It's about fully understanding someone else. It's about fully being there. It's about knowing how they react and what's going to impact them. And when you truly know them, you have the ability to love them in a pure way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that encompasses everything that you and I've been talking about, from the acknowledging people and the active listening and really being aware of other people and doing for other people and empowering other people. In order to empower someone, you have to know what it is that they want to be empowered about. Otherwise, it's not really empowering them. You're just giving them something that they're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah. And if they're
Not
like,
an
if they're a
empowerment.
yes person, right, they're going to actually resent you because
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I'm trying to empower them. They seem to be taking everything I give them. They must like it. And they're just the yes person. And they're like, God, I wish they would stop giving me stuff. I'm so sick of all the stuff they're giving to me.
Yeah, that's not knowing someone.
That's being oblivious to someone.
Yes. Yes, and it's not allowing someone to speak their truth.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. And I that's really I don't know if I put it in my head like this before, and I probably understood it at some fundamental level, yada yada yada, all that fun stuff. But like, to truly empower somebody, you do need to know them. If you don't know them, you can't effectively empower them. You might get lucky here and there, but in the
Right.
long run, it's not sustainable until you know them.
Right. Right. Yes. It's, you know, and the thing is, so few people actually know themselves. How often, when you are with your significant other or a buddy, and all you're trying to do is figure out where you want to go to dinner, and you ask them,
Uh-huh. No, I know this
you
one
ask,
very well.
where do you want to go to dinner? I don't know. Okay, how about we go have pizza? No, I don't want pizza. How about we go have Greek? I don't want Greek. How about we go have, you go through this whole list and no, 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 no. Here's the thing. The majority of people can't tell you what they want. They can tell you what they don't want. So a lot of times when you're getting to know someone, rather than asking them, what do you want to do with your life? Start with the exact opposite. What don't you want to do with your life? What are the things that you really don't like? What are the things that you never see yourself doing?
That's a
And
fascinating question.
and as they start thinking about the things that they don't want, guess what they can eventually formulate?
The things they do want.
Yeah. Yeah. Because most people don't spend time thinking about what they really want. They think about the things they don't want.
Yeah, they spend all their time thinking about the things they don't want. Because
Yeah.
the way society is today, we're so focused on all of the negative aspects. We're almost primed from our youth to only think in the negative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Along with that, what I would say is part of the role of an elite leader is to help guide people out of thinking only in the negative and to think into the positive or the possibilities, and helping them see that potential that actually exists out there.
Yeah, one of my favorite questions in working with clients, and I'll do this in, seminars. I've even done it from stage. I've done it with one-on-one clients. When people say, I don't know, my favorite comeback to that is, okay, you don't know, but let's just pretend. What if you did know?
Mm-hmm.
What if you did know? What would that look like? And it gets them out of having to come up with a concrete answer, and they get to be creative and dream a little bit. And before you know it, they're actually answering the very question that just a few minutes ago they were saying they didn't know.
Yeah. A
And those
lot of
can be
times.
big questions.
Oh, yeah. A lot of times people do know. They just haven't spent the time to make themselves aware that they know.
Yeah, that's why that little twist. Well, what if you did know? And you have to ask it like that, real quizzically, real, there's no pressure. So what if you did know?
Exactly. Or another one that I run into a lot is like, where do you want to go to? I don't know. What if you knew? Where could you go to?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you open up the realm of possibility. And the realm of
Right.
possibility is infinite. You can do anything in the realm of possibility. And that doesn't mean that you do everything that comes to mind, because there's going to be some things that probably are not the best thing to do, right? Or maybe
Right.
not the best thing to do in your current situation. For
Right.
instance, if you're looking to do marketing for your business, right? You could go door to door to everybody and say, hey, this is my business. This is what I'm offering. Do you want it? You can
Right.
do that. Is it the best idea? Maybe not, because are you even in the right type of neighborhood?
Right.
Are they even interested in around the area that you're talking about? Maybe that's not the best idea. On the other end, you could be like, we're going to put an advertisement in New York Times Square on the big screen. Everyone's going to see it. But you're making under $50,000 a year. And it's
Right.
maybe that's it's within the realm of possibility, but maybe it's not where we should land on right now.
I see no problem with this.
but once you get into possibility and you come up with more ideas, then you can
Yep.
land on something that makes a lot more sense. Instead of knocking door to door, maybe you find a group of people that are interested in your product
Mm-hmm.
and service, and they have a meetup. So you go to the
Yeah,
meetup
exactly.
and
Let's have
meet
a
them in
meetup.
person. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or instead of advertising in New York Times Square, right? You advertise on your Facebook page that you've got going. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that you can do right now.
Right. Right. And just with doing a post, you don't even have to advertise for your first.
Exactly. Awesome. So Angela, we've gone all over the place. Tons of awesome conversation we've been having around the subject of elite leadership. If
Yep.
you had to choose just one thing to leave with people, what would be
Mm-hmm.
that one thing that you'd want to leave with them?
Regarding elite leadership or just in general?
We'll say yes. Give me both.
Okay, awesome. And actually, this works for both. One of the biggest distinctions that, as I was doing that introspective work for myself, one of the biggest distinctions that I learned was to switch the word to the word for. And here's what I mean by that.
Yeah,
Lots of
explain that one
people
for me.
say, yeah, lots of people say, why is this happening to me? Or what is happening to me? What if instead it was, what if this is happening for me? If it's happening for me, what are the lessons I can learn from it? So it's just taking the word to and putting the word for in there and really understanding. And maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's for your business. Maybe it's for your team. Why is this happening to the team? Why is it happening for the team? Why is this happening to my business? What if it's happening for your business?
That is such a fascinating concept. I've never heard that one before. And that is really powerful way to transition the mindset. I love that. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So Angela, if anyone is trying to get a hold of you, what are the best ways for them to go out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm all over social media. My social media handle is at AW Stillwell. So Facebook, if you type in the little at symbol, it's at AW Stillwell, you'll get to my Facebook page. On Instagram, same thing on LinkedIn. So same handle everywhere. And that's AWSTILLWELL. And I have a really cool assessment. Ready for me to talk about that?
All right, let's talk about it.
Yeah. It's called Warrior Wisdom. You can go to the URL warriorwisdomquiz.com. That's warriorwisdomquiz.com. And what that does, we've talked a few times about the Wheel of Life, and it's an assessment that measures several different areas that frequently are on the Wheel of Life, where you get to measure yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in those areas. There's multiple questions for each section that kind of gives you an idea. And then there's a couple of questions at the end that give you free flow area to write. So it's something that just kind of gets your brain juices flowing as to where you are. So it's warriorwisdomquiz.com. And with that assessment, when you get your results, you also have the opportunity to sign up for a 30-minute consultation with me.
Woo, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And this quiz can be a game changer if you allow it to be.
Yes. It absolutely can. To see yourself scored in different areas. And a lot of times it's things that we haven't even really been thinking about. So many times we don't evaluate those different pieces of our lives. And when you have to actually give yourself a score, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing so bad in that area.
Yeah.
Or wow, I'm doing much better in this area than I thought I was. Yeah, it's really insightful. It gives so many, it's insightful to see it.
Absolutely. And one more time, could you repeat your email address just for everyone to know, Angela?
The email address or the URL? Which one?
Both.
Okay. Email is angela@untappedstrengths.com. And the social media handle, social media. We've been talking a lot.
I know.
The social media handle is at AWSTILLWELL. And the URL is warriorwisdomquiz.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Angela. It's been a blast of a conversation. And that wraps up the first day of the Legendary Leadership Summit. It's been a blast for me. I've learned so much. I've had so many great conversations. So much gold has been dropped in these past couple of days. It is crazy how much information. And Angela, you've just dropped a whole bunch of wonderful information on top of us. So many great ideas, ways of thinking that aren't necessarily there. And tomorrow, there's going to be even more coming towards us.